All right, now we're going to be looking at the discriminant, and it's a big kind of weird word, but it's just part of the quadratic formula. So remember, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And in the three examples we did, we got one imaginary answer, we got, or two imaginary answers, we got one problem where they came out real, two real, and then we had another problem where we had one real answer. So the discriminant is the stuff that's under the radical, and that's what's going to tell us if we get imaginary answers, real answers, or one real answer. So let's go ahead and just kind of look at a chart that works with this, or that explains this. All right, so there's my chart. If you want to push pause and make something kind of like this, or just kind of wait and look and then pause it to copy it. So I wrote b squared minus 4ac 3 times. That's just the stuff under the radical. Remember, discriminant is just b squared minus 4ac, just the stuff under the radical. If it's greater than 0, so if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, remember that just means if it's positive, if you get a positive number. If you look back at our examples that we did in the last video, if we got positive, we had 2 real. Remember, it's like radical 53, they were kind of ugly. If we look at a graph, and I'm just going to make a sketch of a graph here. If we look at a graph, if I get 2 real answers, the graph is going to look like this. And then I'll just put this in words here. If it's positive, we get 2 real solutions. Or we get 2 real, we could call them zeros. They're x-intercepts. All right, if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0. That was that last example that I did where the parabola, the vertex was just right on the x-axis. So that would give us 1 real solution, or 1 real 0. Oops, 0. And then finally, if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, remember numbers that are less than 0 are just negative, then that would be imaginary answers. That was that first example that I did. So if we were to graph a parabola like that, it would not touch the x-axis at all. It looks like there's no solution. So maybe in Algebra 1 you did this and you said no real solutions. Well, now we can say there's 2 complex. Remember, complex has the real and the imaginary part solutions, or 2 complex zeros. All right, so let's just do a couple problems with this. All right, so I'm going to give you a problem. What I want you to do is find the discriminant and then describe the kind of roots that it has. So x squared plus 10x plus 23 is equal to 0. So I just want to know if it's going to have 2 real, 1 real, or 2 complex. So all I'm going to do to find the discriminant is just do b squared minus 4ac. So remember, b is in front of x, so that's 10 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, and c is 23. So we've got 100 minus 92. We get a positive value of 8, so that's positive, obviously, which means I'm going to have 2 real solutions. So here's my discriminant. I'm just going to do it like that. My discriminant is 8, and these are my solutions, 2 real solutions. All right, let's do another one. We've got x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 0. So again, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So I've got b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I've got 100 minus 100. That gives me 0. So my discriminant is 0 here. My discriminant was 8 there, which means I'm going to have 1 real solution. Let's try a third one here. 4x squared plus 3x plus 12 is equal to 3 minus 3x. So obviously we have to set this equal to 0 first, so I'm going to add 3x to both sides. and subtract 3. So I have 4x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. My discriminant is b squared minus 4 times a times c. I'm just looking at the number under the radical here. So that gives me 36 minus 144. So I get a negative 108. My discriminant is negative, so I get 2 imaginary or 2 complex. You can write it either way. We get 0 real ones, so my graph would not cross the x-axis. All right, I've got one more thing for us to try here. All right, so here's our directions here. We're going to use the discriminant to find all the values of c, which make the equation have 2 real, 1 real, and 2 imaginary. So I'm asking you to do 3 different things here. So here's what our problem looks like. What number in? 7. So we're going to do 3x squared plus 24x plus c is equal to 0. So I'm not telling you what c is, so we need to figure out what it should be so that we could have 2 real, 1 real, and 2 imaginary answers. Make sure it's equal to 0 first. I'm going to do my b squared minus 4ac, because we're just looking at the discriminant here. So I've got b squared is 24 squared minus 4 times a is 3, and then c. First thing I'm going to do is I want to have 2 real answers. Actually, no, I'm going to jump and do 1 real first. So I'm going to do this. I want 1 real. If it's 1 real, it needs to equal 0. So I think that's going to be the easiest. So first I'm going to set it equal to 0 to find 1 real answer. So I've got 24 squared is 576 minus 12c is equal to 0. Do you see how I can solve for c now? Subtract 576 from both sides. So negative 12c is negative 576. Divide by 12, and I get c is equal to 48. So when c is equal to 48, so if I plug a 48 in right there, I'm going to get 1 real answer. All right, now what I'm going to do is remember color here. If I want 2 real, it means that it needs to be greater than 0. So I would do b squared minus 4 times a times c is greater than 0, and this is going to give me 2 real answers. So when I do this work, I've got same numbers here. 576 minus 12c is greater than 0. Subtract 576 from both sides. Negative 576. Careful here, when you divide by that negative number, remember with inequalities, that inequality has to flip. So careful on that one. So if c is less than 48, I'm going to get 2 real answers. So don't just guess which one it's supposed to be. And then finally, we need to check to see if there's 2 imaginary. Remember, if it's 2 imaginary, we need it to, the whole discriminant to come out negative. So if I want 2 imaginary answers, I need the discriminant b squared minus 4 times a times c to be less than 0. So when I do this work, I've got 576 minus 12c less than 0. Negative 12c is less than negative 576. Again, we're dividing by a negative, so that inequality flips, and I get c is greater than 48. So that, as long as c is bigger than 48, that would give me 2 imaginary solutions. All right, so I'm just going to give you one example of these if you need more help with it, but just go back and look. The real is always going to be equal, the 1 real. And then the 2 real and the 2 imaginary, these signs are just going to be flipped. So if you figure out one of them, then you should be able to figure out the other 2. You know, maybe it'd be smart to start with the 2 real, so you know what this inequality sign is, and then you can just make this equal, and then you can flip the inequality for the other one. So, but you will have some problems like this. So, you know, maybe watch again if you're not sure.